Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us for our webinar today. My name is Marius Moscovici. I am the founder and CEO of Metric Insights. And today I'm delighted to be joined by John Castelbuono. John has worked in business intelligence for a very long time, and he has done no less than 3 business intelligence portal implementations, all that have been extremely transformational for the organizations that he worked for. He did this at Comcast, and then more recently at Waste Management and at Wellstar Health Systems, and at both Wellstar Healthcare Systems and at Waste Management. He did that with Metric Insights. So today, John is going to be sharing with you essentially his playbook. How is it that he was able to do these implementations and get to success very, very quickly and get the results within these fairly diverse organizations that have very demanding environments in order to places to deploy BI portal solutions. So very excited to have have John join us. John, welcome.
Thank you. Appreciate it, Max.
And before we get started with John's presentation, I'm going to just spend a few minutes kind of level setting on what BI portals are and the technologies involved, and give you kind of a little bit of a flavor of what a BI portal solution looks like. The reason for that is for anyone who's in the group here and listening who does not have all the background, that does not necessarily know what the intricacies of BI portal implementations. So we'll kind of level set that, and then we'll jump right into John's presentation. So fundamentally, of course, the BI portal is a single pane of glass through which you're going to consume all of your analytic. The whole idea is that you're bringing together your reporting from multiple disparate sources, and you're delivering it to users in a governed environment where you're controlling what they have access to and what they see across the entire portfolio. They get it to all of it in one place. It's all searchable, and it's consumed in a consistent manner from a governance perspective. So, what does that mean from what it takes to implement one of these things? Well, there's a really a step-by-step process that you follow, almost independent of technology, but I'll give you the steps as they relate to the Metric Insight solution specifically. Right, so here, the first step is you kind of plug in to your existing BI ecosystem. So here you're connecting to Tableau, Power BI, Cognos, whatever BI tools you're using within your enterprise, as well as potentially SaaS products, your files that we want to share that have analytic content in them in SharePoint or on shared drives, as well as anything else that your users might be consuming from an analytics perspective. And so, Metric Insights is a plugin infrastructure that reads the metadata from all these sources in preparation for being able to build a portal. Once you've done that, then the next step is typically for most organizations a rationalization effort. What we call this the BI ops layer, where you look through and you might have thousands of reports in your environment, but probably a very large percentage of those are duplicates. Some of them might be obsolete. There may be things that an analyst created months or years ago, and maybe that person isn't even with the company anymore, or the business model has changed and it's no longer in use. And so you need to weed all those out, and you want to keep only the content that is actually useful, that people are consuming actively, that represents correct, accurate, relevant information for your users. And that is what you're going to want to promote to the portal. And if you happen to have a data catalog, like Calibra and Elation, Purview, whatever you might Outland, whatever you might be using, then you also typically want to integrate information from there. You may have glossary terms, key lineage type information, data sensitivity, classification, things of that nature. You want to enrich all of the metadata that you've collected from your BI tools with the information from your data catalog, so that your users, when they consume their reporting, they have the benefit of being able to access and understand everything about that analytic and then interpret the information properly. So once you've done that, then you're ready to really publish a catalog. So this is going to be the place where it has all that information you propagated into your portal is available via catalog. It's all searchable, and it's typically secured with your LDAP or Active Directory system, if you've got one of those, so that you can inherit the security system you have in place. And in some cases, if you're not using LDAP or AD, if you're a hospital chain that's using Epic or what have you, you may choose to integrate with the security system directly from metadata directly from that particular source. So, but in either case, you typically do not want to have to duplicate security within your or reinvent security within your catalog. You obviously want to inherit it from your existing system so that no additional work is required to set up proper access. And then after that, then you deliver the solution. And there are a number of different delivery mechanisms. So for example, in Metric Insights, there's of course a delivery through the web, desktop, mobile, with a persona-based user experience. But there's also increasingly now with the growth of LLMs and bots, you want to be able to deliver that information through chat interfaces that you might have in the enterprise. So that might be Slack, it might be Teams, it might be other resource bots that you've created internally to help users find information related to business intelligence. You want to enable all of this information that you've consolidated here and deliver it to every surface that your users may access as they're going through to find the analytics that they want to consume. So this is the architecture, if you like, of pretty much every BI portal implementation, right? So kind of giving you a sense of what some of this looks like, just so that you kind of can visualize what these pieces might involve. If you look at the BI ops layer, the rationalization layer, this is an example of how we do this in Metric Insights, where here you see the example of all the objects in my Tableau repository, and it's flagging potential duplicates for me, and it's identifying, why these are duplicates. So you're looking at the metadata that's available. We can identify things like, do these reports appear to be duplicates because of shared column and table usage based on lineage, based on the same columns and other metadata within the report itself, and so on. And then, there's obviously a process through this whereby you can go through and identify which reports you want to keep, which reports you want to deprecate, and which reports you want to promote to the portal. So that's kind of the first step in the journey. Then once you've done that and you have a catalog in place, then you might be consuming it in an interface that looks something like this. So here I've got this is the main Metric Insights catalog page. On the left-hand side, you can see you've got favorites and categories and things of that nature, filters across the top, and then every single reporting object is represented as a tile in the center section, irrespective of whether it's Click or Tableau or MicroStrategy or whatever it is, and it's the single sort of visual access point for all the content that users have access to. If they click on something there, then they can consume that by, first they might see a preview. Of course, eventually they'll see the actual report, but initially they might see a preview. And in that preview, they will typically get access to that metadata that you enriched from the data catalog, right? So here you can see, for example, it tells you who certified this content. It tells you which KPIs, enterprise KPIs are associated with this report. And then I can actually click on that, on one of those KPIs and see the list of definitions of those KPIs, what other reports are available for it. And, I can see information maybe I pulled from Calibra or Elation, that specifies whether what does that PI data, what kind of classifications involved, et cetera. So this is the preview level that I can see even before I get into the report. And then if I click into it, then I consume the report. I would consume it, live. Here, this is all fully interactive, just iframe within the experience here. So, and no differently than if I were using that report natively within the reporting tool. It's an identical experience, except that in addition to this, I can have more information layered on top, the same kind of metadata, ability to do sharing, ability to also give people announcements about things like, you can integrate this with alerting tools internally, data quality tools, just so that users know things like, hey, I'm looking at this report, but there's a delay in today's data feeds. So, this might be stale data, or with this particular report has data that failed the data quality check based on the lineage of the report. Be aware of that when you're looking at it. So, these kinds of notifications up top to make sure that users are understand what they're looking at and know if there's any kind of a quality issue associated with what they're looking at, that they know about it before they dive in and pick up a number that's incorrect and then generate a whole bunch of downstream ramifications associated with using incorrect information. And then search, of course, right? So you should be able to search across everything, across many different criteria on any surface. So, you want to be able to do it on mobile. You want to be able to do it on, here is an example on Slack, or you can do it in Teams. And then, of course, within the web itself, where you can specify criteria, you can filter based on things that are just certified or particular terms that are included, and access all information in one place, and then, click into it once you've identified the piece of content that you want to access. And then equally important, I think, from a portal perspective, one of the reasons you have a portal is so that users can discover content. And oftentimes you want them to be able to discover content that they don't necessarily have access to yet. So you can publish content to the portal and say, this is discoverable by a certain set of users or by all users, and then they can find it through search. When they click on it, they see a lock. They don't actually see the information, but maybe they see the metadata associated with it. And then they have a request access button that they could click on that, puts them into ServiceNow or some access request mechanism to gain access. So this allows you to kind of handle this notion of adjacency where, maybe the marketing people don't use the sales reports all the time. Maybe they're not even given access to the sales reports, but knowing that these sales reports exist and knowing what they're there, if there is something that they need at some point, they can request access, and then the owner of that content can decide if it's appropriate to give them access. And that avoids the situation where people go and build something, a duplicate of something that already exists, because they're just not aware of the fact that something's there and they simply don't have access to it. And then we talked about kind of the LLM-based type approach. So increasingly, everyone is expecting to be able to interface with their content, not just through basic search, Google-style search, but also through chat and a conversation, and being able to search for content with multiple iterations. So asking for something and then having follow-up conversations to indicate, okay, what reports do we have on this particular area? Which of these are certified? Whether, and so on and so forth, and kind of get to the bottom of what specific content you want in more of a conversational chatbot interface is also a key delivery paradigm for these portals. And then finally, if you think about from a delivery perspective, from a user experience, once you've got the particular visualizations in there, and you oftentimes want to create these customized views for users to be able to access information. So it might be something what we call kind of portal pages or landing pages. And so here you have an example of that. So you've got high-level KPIs. These could be sourced from various different dashboards or various different tools, and it gives users at a glance view into all their KPIs based on who they are and their persona, and whether they're at their desktop or at their mobile. And if they're interested in seeing more, they tap on one of those metrics, and then it opens up that particular report where they can see the details in Power BI or Tableau or whatever you might have. And then from an onboarding perspective, of course, from a content publishing perspective, you've got governance, which is very important. So you've got to be able to have a process by which you figure out how you're going to onboard content, like we talked about. Once you remove those duplicates, you also have a process by which you may have go through multiple stages to get things published to the portal. You may have a certification attestation process. So having a workflow for publishing is an important capability that you need to have to be able to ensure that not only the initial content that's there has a way to get on there, but as new content gets added, there's a mechanism to publish it to the portal in a structured way, in a way that ensures the right metadata has been added and the right review has been performed on it. So in this case, different users may be responsible for different stages to review the content, to add metadata, to certify it, and so on and so forth. And once you've got all this in the portal, clearly a key capability, key part of your solution is going to be able to look at engagement over time. So understanding how is it that a particular object, each report, what's most popular, what's less popular, how is engagement tracking over time? all of these kind of capabilities are very important in order to be able to understand what content you want to keep and what content you want to deprecate over time. Since there's things that might be very relevant today and 6 months from now become less relevant as the business changes, as there's new analytics out there. And so being able to track that through tracking tools is one of the things that you definitely want to be able to have in your portal solution. With that, let me hand it over to John, who's gonna walk you through really what are the how is it that you should think about preparing your BI portal initiative for success.
Yeah, because if you're a decision maker, you just said a lot, right? There's probably a lot of ingredients, components, and elements that is going to take an army to set up. But my last implementation, I had one technical SME and one admin, and I just have an admin on it now, running the whole platform, and it's not federated, meaning it has a central intake for adding elements and keeping the overall hygiene. So you can't do that unless you just establish your primary goals. So if your primary goals are simple, and simple to me in terms of a BI portal is eliminate waste and create single version of the truth. That is the way to get started. That is the way to get this up and running in 90 days. And that is the way to truly put it through the entire organization. You'll just see it grow very fast over time as you continue to enrich the environment. So starting simple and having those primary goals, or whatever your primary goals, well defined, is a core component. And the next one, Marius. So implementation, how to get, so let's go to the next one. It's kind of a little bit more of this overall playbook. So critical elements for the project plan. The last slide Marius showed you had a little bit of it. I built a specific view of Power BI report, quite frankly. You have to know what's being consumed. So that's one of the critical elements. So not only a utilization, but a utilization by cohorts as it relates to your business. So what Marius showed you is good for the overall ecosystem, but you got to organize it by your customer base. So something custom for your customer base, very simple to pull together. The data exists within the platform is a key element. Another key element from your project plan perspective, you remember the index view. You want to make sure your index view is concise, meaning no scroll. All your categorization on the left side of your index view fits on your screen, fits on a normal size screen. And then another key element for success, and I think it's something you can't overlook, is a concise inventory of all elements, meaning my admins specifically stood up to make sure we have 90-day review cycle on each element, make sure the health of the delivery is still there, eliminating waste, the stuff that's not needed, and along with an inventory of elements, reports, dashboards, analysis, what have you. There's also a KPI inventory. KPI inventories help people find what they're looking for very, very easy. It also ensures that we're not deprecating and we're eliminating waste, another one of the big value drivers. Next slide. Okay, the incremental approach. So post getting the foundation pieces we just talked about, a lot of the success of the platform is how you implement. So if you try to get a big bang approach, it's going to take you a while to fire this up. If you go with that incremental piece, and then you stage your next most important ingredient, like might be portal pages or specific areas within your business, then you'll win. Then you'll conserve resources. Then you'll focus on what's more important. So for example, my core incremental focus with my two primary objectives, which is single version of the truth and consolidation, is canvassing and aligning business units and not exploring additional functionality of the portal just yet, but getting to that single version. Or it might be, well, how do I expand into metric tiles? How do I expand in some of the additional chat features and more growing everyday platform? So figure out what incremental pieces you're looking to add, but make sure you solve for your primary pieces first and solve with intent. Next slide, Marius. And then results, I think if you're not tracking overall utilization and overall utilization by your cohorts, meaning your customer categories, or however you define folks you think should be using it, then you got to figure out what's gone wrong, what's not. One of the big ingredients in terms of adoption to get the results piece right is the roadshow. So you create a roadshow, you create a cadence where you're meeting with these individual cohorts at a frequency and a bit of a center of excellence approach in terms of how to leverage the portal goes a very, very long way to get the adoption. The adoption curve grows 25% month over month every month. You get 25% new unique users within an organization month over month with that approach. Any more slides, Marius?
Yep, you've got
Oh,
a
the pitfall
pitfalls.
one. Yeah, this is a big one. So I guess I kind of alluded to it a couple of times, but I'll say it very, very clear. If you take a big bite of the apple up front, it's going to take you a while to get this into play, and you'll move from one budget cycle to the next if you're a decision maker. Start small. You can fire this thing up relatively quick with the resources that I described to you, and you'll win. And the other thing is, you have to think through if it's a federated approach or if it is a centralized approach. I've done better with a centralized approach, meaning a bunch of different cohorts within the company can't start uploading and can't start making their own portal pages, et cetera, et cetera. You can make a community of practice approach towards that, where you're at least having some guardrails up, but just be very, very careful because that could be another pitfall as well. I think that's all I had, Marcus.
Yeah, I think that's right. So let's I'm going to ask you a few questions, kind of to dive into some of those topics you mentioned. And
Yeah.
if there's anyone on the Zoom here that has specific questions, please feel free to put it into the Q&A or chat area, and we'll pick that up as well. So, John, you talked about, getting this going quickly. And I mean, I think one of the challenges that people face a lot of times is getting alignment within an organization around that. Around these kinds of efforts, there's oftentimes a perception of, well, I've got BI tools, and some people don't necessarily see, well, why do I need a portal? Can't I just use the existing tools, etc. Can you talk a little bit about what's, from the having done this now in multiple organizations with many different environments, what were some of your key takeaways about how did you get the organization behind the initiative?
Yeah. So you got to listen to understanding what the pain points are. So if the pain points are, let's say senior leadership seeing too many different vehicles coming at them at once and they can't find what they're looking for in terms of deliveries. Or if you're seeing where there's a lot of redundancy and waste within the organization, we have to streamline our processes and what we're working on needs to be meaningful versus folks recycling the same initiative over and over from a delivery perspective. Just figuring out where those value drivers are, and then you cater to the driver. You show the example of, hey, not only do we have these two deliveries with the KPIs you're looking for, we were able to get rid of one because we were able to consolidate that up. We were able to push it through Blast. We put metric alerting through the portal, and we certified this end to end from a data elements perspective all the way up to visualization. We'll guarantee you this delivery is going to be accurate 100% of the time and in your inbox every morning. That goes a long, long way into clearing up the confusion and clutter, which is typical in any organization.
Yeah, that's great. And what about, I mean, I know, oftentimes if you're going in to do these kinds of portal solutions, usually your users today have a whole bunch of bookmarks saved, right, of things that they're connecting to today in the absence of a portal. That's the way they sort of cope with it. So, there's the ease of it's in my browser bookmark. I just have one click and I go to it. What have you found to be sort of the keys to competing with that? In other words, deploying a portal and then having them really use the portal rather than just continue to use the bookmarks. Do you kind of incentivize them? Do you do it by mandate? What recommendations do you have about
Both,
how to make
actually.
that
So
work?
you'll do both. And it's simple to do both, but it's not daunting. So your roadshow is your initial point of entry. It's like, here's how you use it. Here's where your content is. And then you do individual office hours, especially with key stakeholders. You walk them through, you establish favorites, you establish any kind of cadence on email bursts, any kind of metric alerting. make sure the tiles that they're looking for are there and they have access to them. And that's very, very simple. And that's something your admins can handle or you can handle. And then the other component would be, hey, how do I make sure that um, I'm driving enough utilization within that group? It's having them then sponsor. It's like train the train. Have them. You're there with them, but have them sponsor the conversations with the folks that are supposed to be using the tool, and how they're supposed to be using and provisioning things like that. So it's a lot easier than you think, though. It takes off because people organizations long for this type of this type of collective approach towards insights. It is not a hard sell. You can show the ROI with this, whether you're looking at a reduction in time savings from an insights perspective, in a reduction in waste from duplicative work, things like that, certification, trust in information. So it's easier than you think. I've gone through
So
it a
do
few
you,
times. It's easier than you think.
So do you, John, do you for that, do you basically like demonstrate the case up front, explaining, like you said, highlighting reduction in waste, making it easier for people to access things, reducing the amount of time that they have to get up to speed, and then measure it on the back end, or what's sort of the approach that you typically use
Cost model, there's to sell the product. There's cost model. You make some approximations on time savings. You make some approximations on less efforts. You make some approximations on less efforts with eliminating waste, and some on faster insights, and you're good. None of this
Okay.
you can find on the P&L.
Hmm.
All of it you can find in time savings because people have the confidence to know that it's in my inbox every day, and everything else I need is in that same portal. It sells itself.
Yeah, no, that's good, and we've seen people kind of even validate that with surveys and so forth. So
Yeah,
it's
and it's not a
definitely
heavy lift. I
legitimate.
mean, you get all this functionality without a heavy lift. It's a bit of a no-brainer because it has a monstrous impact to your customer base, to the people who have a real day job that aren't in data reporting and insights. They're in running a business. So you can show the value very, very quickly to them and build the confidence and trust within this BI portal. And I've been down this road a few times. Metric Insights does it best.
Thank you, John. But as far as how do
He's
you
not paying me, by
decide?
the way. You don't
Yeah,
have
no,
to.
I didn't know you're not paid for this conversation. But thank you for saying that. How do you decide kind of in that initial implementation? You talked about kind of doing it as a kind of a, don't bite too much off, right? Like get that
Yeah,
incremental
a lot of
started. I mean, how
folks,
that's
you don't have to solve for everything, excuse me. But when you go too big, you don't solve for anything.
hmm
And it'll take you, I've seen folks try to implement this, taking them a year. They're still waiting on the dime because they're just trying to solve for any edge case that they can imagine to make it a universal fit, where you could make it a universal fit with your core concepts and then build off of that. Because once you nail down, and Marish, you had mentioned before, and I never really answered it. Once you nail down single point of entry, you can I talked to you about the soft approach, which is training and educating knowledge transfer, right? But then the next step, and I didn't talk about, I'll talk about it now, is you cut direct access. So I cut direct, let's say Tableau access. I cut direct Power BI access. There's a big banner that pops up with that exact report in the portal. You just click there now and you have a note on there. Make sure you bookmark this as your new favorite.
Mhm.
It all works. It's all simple. It's just you can't try to over engineer it. You just go with a simple approach, maximize it, expand off of it to the next component that adds the most value.
John, when you've done it, do you recommend that people go sort of narrow and deep initially on their first pass, or wide and shallow? In other words, like do a
Yeah,
enterprise-wide rollout with just, the most popular content as an example as a first step, or
wide and
do
shallow,
something wide, yeah,
wide
or
and shallow,
narrow but
because
go with
then
everything from
because then you'll
go to
have the engagement from your customer cohort to define. What you don't want to do is define the space without your customer and then them saying
Mhm.
you miss something. You go wide and shallow, you have those conversations across your organization. So it's truly an organizational tool. And then you start to bite more pieces off depending on where the need, the interest is, and where the best value.
So it's basically you have you deploy, you use that usage reports you were talking about to figure out what is the most popular content across the organization, deploy that, have that starting point, and then have
You
those
can do that.
conversations with, is that what you're saying?
Yeah, you could do that internally, right? But you also want to do that externally for stuff that people are either getting sent folks that are going direct to a source, let's say it's business objects or wherever. And the portal connects to third-party sources. You don't have to have everything in the portal, but you can have a tile that points you to where it is in a third party, like we have that with our Epic connectivity for the healthcare system. So a lot of times you're not reinventing anything. You're just consolidating your point of entry, and you're adding all the features of metric insights to that point of entry. It's a win-win.
Yeah.
It's not a heavy lift. So that's my recommendation, and I know it's where proof's in pudding.
Mhm.
But
Do you find that when you've done it, are you looking within those particular groups when you're saying go broad? Are you specifically targeting execs first, or are you just kind of doing it across the entire organization
it's a
uniformly?
mix.
What's the thing?
It's a mix. Execs always, because they got to kind of you always need top-down support when you have capital spend. But you're also going to go to those areas that are just supremely dysfunctional, really, really, really have a need, and get your quick wins there, and then the energy just grows off of that, and everybody's like, well, why don't I have it? Well, because we're going to set it up now.
And you mentioned before that you kind of usually get started with a really, small team. Do you then, when you mentioned also federated model, just to kind of clarify for people what we mean by that, are you saying that kind of as you scale these out, these sort of implementations out, you're asking the BI analysts that are that are creating the reports to do their own sort of
Yeah,
self-publishing, or is there?
self-publish, yeah. And then you can get
Okay.
a trusted cohort and they can self-publish. And from inset though, you want to hold those guardrails high.
Mm-hmm.
That's one
So
of the
guardrails meaning like, hey, here's the criteria
centralize
that
them.
this has to meet.
Centralize
Like
them.
it's got, yeah, exactly.
Centralize
So
them.
that centralized team kind of does that first proof to show here's how you do it, and then the individual folks from the different teams
And then
jump
you
in
open it up,
and
you get that extra creativity and it advances. You take those step changes as an organization though. You don't take them in pockets.
yeah. Have you found, as far as, there's oftentimes these kinds of projects, they can sometimes get bogged down on the infrastructure side. I've got to get a server and get connected is there any advice that you have for folks as to how to make sure that everything is aligned on the IT side? Anything you've seen sort of very important there?
No, no, no. I mean, so what your group does well is put together a strong project plan.
Mhm.
Um, this is not a heavy tech stack platform. So you don't need to kind of redo your server to get this to fit, right? So I would say no issues or concerns along those lines. You just march to that timetable, but make sure you're also thinking about not just the technical aspect of turning the lights on, but the business aspect of how they're going to connect to this and what they want to see.
Got it. Great. Okay. Well, thank you.
Yeah,
I think that's some really good advice there. Folks are trying to do that, but to try and plan a portal and how to get the value quickly, and really some of the pitfalls to avoid, which can get you completely ensnared in a quagmire where you don't get to results, right? And I think
oh,
some real pragmatic advice there, John. So thank you for sharing that with everyone, and really appreciate you taking your time and sharing all of your experiences with the community.
happy to help.
Thank you. Take care. Thank you for joining, everyone.